In this video, you'll learn everything you need to know about Nekroz in 2019, whether that be analyzing all of the Nekroz cards in the archetype, other cards you can play like the incantations, side deck options, and 2 deck profiles for 2 different ways of playing this deck, including a Vanity Ruler Turbo variant. This is the Yu-Gi-Oh! Guide to Nekroz in 2019. Before I talk about anything in specific, here are the timestamps for this video in each section, as I know this is going to be a long video and I don't want to make you all sit through the entire thing if you're looking for one specific part. Remember, this video's title may be updated on a yearly basis if no new changes occur for the archetype. So with that, let's begin by analyzing the Nekroz archetype and every card in it. Nekroz are a ritual-based water archetype revolved around super resource efficient ritual summons and hand effects to either cycle for different cards or protect your ritual monsters on field. Easily being one of the best decks of all time as a once tier 0 strategy, this deck was definitely huge back in its prime. Now we're here in 2019 and we still have some of their pieces on the ban list. Nekroz of Brionac is a level 6 water ritual monster with the following effect. You can ritual summon this card with any Nekroz ritual spell. Must be ritual summoned without using Nekroz of Brionac. You can only use each of these effects of Nekroz of Brionac once per turn. You can discard this card, add 1 Nekroz monster from your deck to your hand except Nekroz of Brionac. You can target up to 2 face-up monsters on the field that were special summoned from the extra deck, shuffle them into the deck. So the most important thing about this card is it's very important because it searches any Nekroz monster in the deck, which means you can also search Clausolus, and then Clausolus searches your spells, meaning Brionac searches for literally every card in the archetype. Not to mention that the on-field effect is actually really powerful. Let's take an example in this format. Let's take an example like Salamangreat. You can bounce 2 of their Salamangreat monsters back to the extra deck, which means you're not destroying anything, so it just bypasses Bale Links. Same thing for a deck like Orcust. If you bounce any Orcust extra deck monsters, then Girsu can't protect. In any format where a deck has protection like this, you can use Brionac to bounce cards and bypass any of that destruction protection. This is a mandatory 3 of because you want to see this card in your hand every game just because it gets you so much access to everything, and it actually has a really strong on-field effect. Nekroz of Clausolus is a level 3 water warrior monster with the following effect. You can ritual summon this card with any Nekroz ritual spell. Must be ritual summoned. You can only use each of these effects of Nekroz of Clausolus once per turn. You can discard this card, add 1 Nekroz spell / trap from your deck to your hand. Quick effect, you can target 1 face-up monster on the field that was special summoned from the extra deck. Until the end of this turn, that target's attack becomes 0, also that target's effects are negated. So this card's on-field effect isn't nearly as relevant because of Unicor's existence. However, regardless of that on-field effect, this is a very important card for Nekroz because it searches any of the ritual spells, and it adds immense consistency because of that. You need it specifically at 2 because you only really need 1 to get your play started, but you need a second one in the later games to keep grinding. So essentially you're playing 2 copies of this card. You don't need 3 because then it gets a bit redundant. Nekroz of Unicorn is a level 4 ritual water spellcaster monster with the following effect. You can ritual summon this card with any Nekroz ritual spell. Must be ritual summoned. You can discard this card, then target 1 Nekroz card in your graveyard except Nekroz of Unicorn added to your hand. You can only use this effect of Nekroz of Unicorn once per turn. Negate the effects of face-up monsters on the field that were special summoned from the extra deck. Okay, so Nekroz of Unicorn, ignoring Clausolus because Clausolus isn't nearly as relevant when it comes to going first, is the core reason why this deck can go first. Being able to negate the effects of face-up monsters on the field that were special summoned from the extra deck is an effect that cannot get power creep by new summoning mechanics because it says any monster special summoned from the extra deck, but this blanket negate effect is so strong. Its discard effect is actually also so good for the deck because of Nekroz Cycle. Nekroz Cycle can ritual summon Unicorn from the graveyard to the field, and so because of that, your Unicorn in the graveyard doesn't actually have much of an impact in your overall sequence, so you basically gain free advantage because you're summoning it from the grave. Unicorn, even in the worst case scenario, just buys you another turn so you can keep on going. It's very important because as the game goes on, Nekroz keep getting better, and so getting to the mid and late game is ideal for the deck. You want to be in the mid and late game as fast as possible, and regardless of it being limited at 1 as of now, it's still highly accessible. Obviously, if this card goes to 3, you're going to play 3 copies of this card, and you will 100% want to do that just because this card is so good and you want to see it in every hand. The last thing I'll say about it is it's important that it's a level 4 specifically because this enables rank 4 plays with a card like Manju, which I'll discuss rank 4s in a little while when we get to other cards you can run in the deck. Nekroz of Catastor is a level 5 ritual water dragon effect monster with the following effect. You can ritual summon this card with any Nekroz ritual spell card, must be ritual summoned without using Nekroz of Catastor, and cannot be special summoned by other ways. You can discard this card, then target one Nekroz monster in your graveyard, special summon it. You can only use this effect of Nekroz of Catastor once per turn. At the start of the damage step, if a Nekroz monster you control battles an opponent's face-up monster that was special summoned from the extra deck, destroy that monster. This card is specifically decent in the later game when you need to summon a Nekroz monster from the grave, but the issue is it's so unnecessary because you already have a card like Cycle. So why would you play Catastor? The on-field effect isn't relevant either because of cards like Brionac and Trishula. So yeah, just don't run Catastor. Nekroz of Decisive Armor has the following effect. You can ritual summon this card with any Nekroz ritual spell card, must be ritual summoned without using any level 10 monsters, and cannot be special summoned by other ways. You can only use each of these effects of Nekroz of Decisive Armor once per turn. During either player's turn, you can discard this card, then target one Nekroz monster you control. It gains 1000 attack and defense until the end of this turn, and its on-field effect is you can target one set card your opponent controls, destroy it, and if you do, banish it. So I'm going to talk about Gungnir after this card, but for the purpose of defense, Gungnir is 100% superior to Decisive Armor. Gungnir protects through battle and card effects, while Decisive Armor doesn't even guarantee your monster to live, it only gives it an 1000 attack boost. But the reason why this card can be relevant is because it gives your monster an attack boost, basically meaning you can use this as an aggressive threat as well. I'm not saying this will always be relevant, but if you really need that extra aggression, you can technically run one copy of this card just so you have the ability to push for OTK easier. So at max, run it as a one-of, but most likely I wouldn't recommend you running this card. It doesn't really do anything substantial. Nekroz of Gungnir has the following effect. You can ritual summon this card with any Nekroz ritual spell card, must be ritual summoned without using any level 7 monsters, and cannot be special summoned by other ways. You can only use each of these effects of Nekroz of Gungnir once per turn. During either player's turn, you can discard this card, then target one Nekroz monster you control. It cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects this turn. And during either player's turn, you can discard one Nekroz card, then target one card on the field, destroy it. In a more pure variant, this card is incredible because it gives you that amazing protection effect. Paired with a Trishula, this is way better because that means your Unicorn can't be destroyed by battle or card effects, and it can survive from targeting once. The on-field effect isn't that great and not that necessary, especially considering we have Trishula, which can already clear back row as well, but can also deal with cards in the hand and graveyard. Technically, it can come up if your opponent doesn't have any cards in their hand, but regardless, it can potentially come up depending on the situation. It's mainly used for its effect, but it is convenient to have that other effect to clear more cards, and you really only need one copy because it's so searchable and it only serves this one specific use rather than more multi-purpose. Nekroz of Sophia has the following effect. You can ritual summon this card with any Nekroz ritual spell card, must be ritual summoned from your hand by using 3 monsters you control with different types, and cannot be special summoned by other ways. During either player's main phase 1, you can discard this card and one Nekroz spell card. Your opponent cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck during this phase. When this card is ritual summoned, you can banish all other cards on the field and in the graveyards. You cannot normal summon / set or special summon other monsters the turn you activate this effect. Worst case scenario, your opponent can just go to main phase 2 to continue special summoning from the extra deck. It's essentially a neg 2 for nothing, and its on-field effect prevents other monsters from being summoned. Regardless of the fact that it clears everything basically, you're basically letting your opponent set up on their next turn in order to, well, potentially OTK or just out-resource you. So in the end, don't play this card. Nekroz of Trishula has the following effect. You can ritual summon this card with any Nekroz ritual spell. Must be ritual summoned without using any level 9 monsters. You can only use each of these effects of Nekroz of Trishula once per turn. When a card or effect is activated that targets a Nekroz monster you control, quick effect, you can discard this card and negate the activation. When this card is ritual summoned, you can banish exactly 3 of your opponent's cards, 1 each from their hand, field, and graveyard. The card in the hand is chosen at random. Okay, so it enables targeting and protection like I stated earlier. In unison with Gungnir, this card becomes even better because your unicorn basically is almost guaranteed to just stay on the field. One of the big reasons to play Nekroz of Trishula, however, is its ritual summon effect. So basically you're banishing so many resources with this card. You can banish cards from their graveyard, aka Sky Striker cards, Orcus cards, anything of the sort. You can banish cards on the field, basically anything you need to clear. You can banish resources from the hand. You're basically removing so many resources from the opponent, and this is one of the biggest power plays in the deck. This is easily a 2 of in the deck, not necessarily a 3 of because its discard effect isn't actually that substantial, and this card is only really good going second because you have to banish from the field and grave along with the hand, but it's still a really good card and you want to play it at 2 to be able to go second with it, and you still want to draw it because it can protect your Nekroz monsters from being targeted. You at least need 2 for the grind game especially, so definitely make sure to play at least 2. Nekroz of Valkyrus has the following effect. You can ritual summon this card with any Nekroz ritual spell. Must be ritual summoned without using any level 8 monsters. You can only use each of these effects of Nekroz of Valkyrus once per turn. When an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can banish 1 card from your graveyard and discard this card, negate the attack, and then end the battle phase. During your main phase, you contribute up to 2 monsters from your hand and / or field, and if you do, draw the same number of cards you tributed. So this is a very impactful card in unison with the incantations, which we'll discuss in a little bit. Having leftover bodies means they become more cards in hand, which is the most important thing. So for example, if I have a leftover Manju on field, or like the incantations for example, I can just tribute them and draw more cards. You can also tribute cards from your hand, so if you have a Chariot for example, you can tribute the Chariot, draw a card, and then Chariot's gonna get its effect to search, basically granting you a +1. Ending the battle phase isn't as good as Gungnir because Gungnir also protects through card effects. But if you're already wanting Valkyrus for its on-field effect in multiple copies, it's a great option to have because of this. It's definitely necessary at 2 to 3 copies, it's just such a good card, you want to see it in your opening hand, make sure to run 2 to 3. You don't need 3, it just really depends on more necessarily what variant you're playing. If you're playing the Vanity lock variant, then you're just going to go ahead and play 2 copies in my opinion, because it becomes more cloggy because you don't have as many incantations to put on the field. However, at the same time, you're still able to put it on the field. It's really just dependent on your build and your taste, but definitely at least 2 copies. And that's it for all of the ritual monsters. Now let's get into the effect monsters. Chariot, Strategist of the Nekroz, has the following effect. If you ritual summon exactly 1 Nekroz ritual monster with a card effect that requires use of monsters, this card can be used as the entire requirement. If this card is tributed by a card effect, you can add 1 Warrior Nekroz ritual monster from your deck to your hand. You can only use this effect of Chariot, Strategist of the Nekroz once per turn. This is an absolutely amazing card. When it's tributed for ritual summons or Valkyrus, it searches Brionac, which again searches the entire archetype, and searches Clausulus, which searches any spell you need, and Clausulus is also searchable by Chariot, so basically Chariot searches everything in the archetype as well if it's tributed. It was limited before the July 2019 ban list, then newly put to 2 copies, most likely soon to 3 copies as well. You only need 2 copies for the deck, but depending on how you feel about the card, if it goes to 3 anytime soon, putting a 3rd copy into the deck isn't bad at all. Dance Princess of the Nekroz has the following effect. Your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to the activation of a Nekroz ritual spell card. Nekroz ritual monsters you control cannot be targeted by an opponent's card effects. If this card is tributed by a card effect, you can target one of your banished Nekroz monsters, except Dance Princess of the Nekroz, added to your hand. You can only use this effect of Dance Princess of the Nekroz once per turn. This can be huge for going second, so it basically prevents targeting, which is huge against any targeting heavy deck. An example of this format is Sky Striker, and it enables enables your Nekroz ritual spells to resolve. So a deck this effect is good for is potentially in a heavy negation format, and for example, it's good against counter traps like Orcus Crescendo, Solemn Judgment, etc. It's a 1-of at most because it's highly searchable with Brionic, but it's definitely something to consider depending on the format and what you need. Aerial Priestess of the Nekroz has the following effect. Once per turn, you can reveal any number of Nekroz cards in your hand, increase or reduce this card's level by the number of revealed cards until the end of this turn. If this card is tributed by a card effect, you can add 1 Nekroz monster from your deck to your hand, except a ritual monster. You can only use this effect of Aerial Priestess of the Nekroz once per turn. So its on-field effect isn't relevant, the search for any non-ritual Nekroz monster is unnecessary, and so because neither effects are good or decent at all, don't run it, it's really not necessary. Exa, Enforcer of the Nekroz, has the following effect. If this card is tributed by a card effect, you can add 1 Dragon Nekroz ritual monster from your deck to your hand. If this card is banished, you can target one of your banished Nekroz monsters except this card, special summon that monster. You can only use 1 Exa Enforcer of the Nekroz effect per turn and only once that turn. So there are no actual targets to search because you don't run any of the dragons in standard lists of either variant. Its secondary effect isn't relevant enough to warrant playing this, and so in the end, yeah, no, don't play this. Great Sorcerer of the Nekroz has the following effect. If this card is tributed by a card effect, you can add 1 spellcaster type Nekroz ritual monster from your deck to your hand. If this card is banished, you can send 1 Nekroz monster from your deck to the graveyard, except Great Sorcerer of the Nekroz. You can only use 1 Great Sorcerer of the Nekroz effect per turn and only once that turn. So it's not nearly as good as Shurit, because Shurit gets you Brionic or Clausulus, which get you anything you would have gotten with Great Sorcerer. Shurit has the nice addition as well of filling the full requirement while a Sorcerer does not. Instead, Sorcerer has the Banished effect, which as well the Banish effect doesn't actually warrant this card being played. There are better cards to run in the end, so don't run Great Sorcerer. Zephyr Saber's Swordmaster of the Nekroz, but the only relevant part about its effect is it can tribute itself from hand or field to ritual summon a Nekroz ritual monster. So it's basically an additional ritual method that works from the hand. And it actually is kind of good. It helps you ritual summon monsters in specific formats where the hand effect specifically comes up. So a perfect example right now is against Danger Thunder Dragon fields. Because Hot Red and Hope Harbinger are unable to negate this card enables you to ritual summon through those 2 negates into something like Unicorn, even though you probably won't draw it, but best case scenario, you draw the Unicorn. If you do hard draw it, it means you basically negate all of the cards on their field, and then they're in a really rough position from there. It's not unplayable in the deck at all and can come up depending on the format. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it if it obviously isn't good in the format, but depending on how your testing goes, I would definitely recommend trying this out. It's definitely something to consider in potentially even the side deck, even though there are probably better cards in the side deck to play. Anyways, I think this card's just pretty interesting overall. Zefraxa, Flame Beast of the Nekroz, is a Zephyr Nekroz Pendulum monster as well, but its only relevant effect is the monster effect that basically can special summon itself from the hand or grave if a Nekroz or Zephyr card is destroyed by battle or card effect. This card doesn't help the strategy at all. So yeah, no, I wouldn't recommend playing this card either. That's it for the Nekroz monsters. Now let's get to the ritual spells. So the effect all of them share is all of them can banish themselves along with a Nekroz monster while you control no monsters to add a Nekroz spell from the deck to the hand. There are also all hard ones per turns, which is another thing to note. So the perks of each one, however, is Nekroz Cycle can special summon the Nekroz monster from grave instead of hand. Kaleidoscope can send 1 extra deck monster to the graveyard to summon any number of Nekroz monsters from the hand equal to the level of the extra deck monster sent, and Nekroz Mirror can banish Nekroz monsters from the graveyard as material for the ritual summon. So basically the ratios on these are a bit weird depending on the build. In pure builds you should run 2 of each because you have easy access to all of them regardless, so having 2 of each means you have an equal amount of each, meaning you don't run out of a specific one as easily, and so having 2 basically is perfect enough because that means you can just access them at any point. However, in the Vanity Ruler build, you can run 1 less of Kaleidoscope and Mirror. The reason why is because in that variant, it is less reliant on grinding, more reliant on blowing out the opponent with Vanity Ruler, and Cycle's just the best one for that build, so that's why you want to run less Kaleidoscope and Mirror. Now that I've gone through every card in the archetype, let's discuss the cards you should either 100% be playing or options to consider when building the deck for yourself. Other cards you can play include Incantations. This usually consists of 2 of each effect monster. They all special summon themselves and another incantation from the deck by revealing a ritual monster or spell from the hand, depending on which incantation you have. And depending on which incantation you have, you can either add a ritual monster from the deck or grave or a ritual spell from the deck or grave, depending on which one you summon. You only need 2 of each as well because they all get access to each other, so there's no point in playing any more than that unless you want 3 copies of each, which can become cloggy. However, you realistically only need 2 of each, but you definitely want to be playing at least 2 of each because they are so good in Nekroz. You can tribute them for something like Valkyrus, which you can't really do something like that in other decks. You can obviously use them for ritual summonings, you can tribute them for Vanity Ruler. They are so good in this ritual deck specifically that you definitely want to see an incantation in your hand. You also want to play 1 to 3 Chalice Slime, so depending on your build, you can play 1, 2, or 3. In the pure build, you should probably play 1 to 2, and in the Vanity build, you should play 3. And the reason why is because you can reveal Chalice Slime, discard 1 card, and special summon an incantation from the deck. Any incantation for that matter. So it adds consistency, and it's very important in the Vanity's Ruler variant by getting you easy access to Cyber Angel Ben 10, which can be used as ritual material to then get you access to Vanity Ruler. So overall it works perfectly, and then it gets you access to Vanity Ruler, and then you kind of win from there if they don't have an out to your Vanity Ruler. The last incantation card you want to play is 1 Inception. So this card's really good because it can ritual summon any ritual monster. You must specifically tribute incantation monsters, but the big thing is while it's in the graveyard, you can send an incantation from your hand or face-up field, and because you're already putting incantations on the field regardless, it's really easy to fulfill this requirement. And then you special summon 1 incantation monster from your deck, and then you can add the ritual spell back to your hand. So this card is basically Value Town. Obviously, it doesn't gain you advantage on the ritual summon, but with incantation monsters already, this card is really good for resourcing and getting an additional ritual spell back in your hand. You'd usually see 1 of this in the Vanity Ruler variant, so yeah. One tech that isn't necessarily talked about that I thought I might as well bring up because it's not like I'm playing this deck anytime soon, and I want to give you guys the best guide possible. So here we have Saravis. Saravis can be used in a Vanity Ruler variant. It's basically a Trishula for any monster. You can discard it to protect your monster from being targeted, meaning you can protect your Vanity Ruler from being targeted, and it makes it harder to deal with. It's potentially good in the main deck, but I would suggest mainly as a one-of. It's highly searchable regardless though, so most likely you wouldn't need anything higher than just 1 copy. Saravis is really good in the Vanity Ruler variant though. Honestly, having that extra targeting protection can be crucial in order to seal games. And obviously in Vanity Ruler variants, you have to play Vanity Ruler, so you only need 1 copy. You're playing Vanity Ruler with 2 Ben 10, Cyber Angel Ben 10, and essentially the combo goes, you somehow get access to Ben 10, you tribute the Ben 10, you get a search for Vanity Ruler, and then you tribute some of the Vanity Ruler. It's pretty straightforward, and Vanity Ruler is honestly a win condition against some decks. For example, Danger Thunder have a really hard time outing it. Obviously they can hit Bigfoot out of their hand in order to out the Vanity Ruler, which is a way of doing it, but if you're playing Saravis, you're able to deal with that. Vanity Ruler can be pretty difficult to deal with. It's such a good win condition. It's a one-sided Vanity's Fiend. It doesn't prevent special summoning for both players. It's only 1 player. It does require 2 tributes, but because you're already putting so many tribute fodders on the field with incantations already, it doesn't really matter. So Vanity Ruler is amazing, and it's honestly a really good win condition, and I think the Vanity Ruler variant is the better way to play the deck, but I will still go over both deck lists. So you guys should probably already know what it does, but I'll explain it regardless. On normal summon, it adds a ritual monster or ritual spell from your deck to your hand. So it's 3 more copies of everything in your deck. This deck does not rely on its normal summon except in the Vanity Ruler variant where you want to summon Vanity Ruler every turn. It does conflict with the Vanity Ruler combo like I just stated, but Manju is honestly so good that you might just have to run it regardless. And you can't always perform the combo, and Manju's just really good to hard draw going second as well, so Manju probably is just, like I said, too good not to run. You don't necessarily need to run it, but it's probably smart if you do. It just adds that extra layer of consistency. Zaborg the Mega Monarch is not played in any Vanity Ruler variant, but it is so good in the Pure variant. It is an additional normal summon in a Pure build. If it resolves, you gain insane advantage, because it sends 8 extra deck monsters to the graveyard. I repeat, 8. And here's the kicker, it's not even just your extra deck, it's your opponent's extra deck as well. But obviously sending half of your opponent's extra deck to the grave is powerful. But what are you sending from yours? Well, 3 Herald of the Arclight, totally awesome. Elder Entity Ints, Omega to recycle resources from the grave? Oh yes, this is so good. Herald of the Arclight adds a ritual from the deck to the hand, totally awesome, recurs from the grave, and that's relevant because you have Nekroz monsters that discard from the hand, so you can discard your Nekroz monsters first and then tribute for Zaborg, and then Zaborg will send the totally awesomes to get the resources back. Ints pops your opponent's cards, and Omega shovels any card from the graveyard into the deck. This includes your opponent's graveyard, so if you need to put something back from your opponent's graveyard to stop them from recurring more resources, that's an option as well. So Zaborg is really strong, honestly. It can be fragile to hand traps, like very fragile, and it doesn't work in a Vanity's Fiend variant, but in Pure, it's insane if it resolves. Run 3 in Pure, 0 in the Vanity's Fiend variant. Potentially, you don't need to run Zaborg also, just because it's so fragile, so it really just depends on what you feel like, but Zaborg is just such a big power card in the deck. That's it for the main deck monsters. Now let's go to the extra deck. So you want to run 3 Herald, 1 Ints. The ratios do change if you're running Zaborg, but basically the standard is 3 Herald, 1 Ints. Kaleidoscope puts either of these monsters from the extra deck into the grave, and you can search for any ritual monster or spell or clear cards on the field, so it just makes Kaleidoscope way too good. You need 1 level 6, 11, and 12 extra deck monsters. These cannot be Xyz monsters because they are rank monsters. You have to play a Synchro or Fusion in this role. These specific levels come up with Kaleidoscope for ritual summoning, so you have to make sure you have at least 1 of each in there. And lastly, some rank 4s you can run are Dweller / Tornado Dragon, just generically powerful depending on the format. Exciton helps clearing boards. Daigusto Emerald, just recently released off the ban list, can recycle monsters from the grave to gain more card advantage. And Gagaga Cowboy is good in time, especially in this deck because not everyone knows what the cards do, meaning you will have to play longer games than you would preferably like, meaning they will probably go to time more often. All of these extra deck monsters are mainly one-of monsters for versatility, so don't consider running more even with Extravagance. Speaking of Extravagance, what spells can you run in the deck? Well, there's 3 Extravagance. It's literally the best draw card you can play in the deck, but obviously not everyone can afford Extravagance, so a budget alternative is Celestial Observatory. As you're already playing a decent amount of level 6 monsters that are already highly accessible like Ben 10 and Brionic, you can easily gain advantage off of Celestial. Also, Celestial can return from the field as well, and not just the hand, so that makes it even better. 3 Preparation of Rites is just 3 more copies of any card in your entire deck, but gets even better if you have a ritual spell engrave. I don't understand why you wouldn't play this card. And that's it for all of the main deck options you should consider. Before we move on to the deck profiles, let's now see what cards you can potentially throw into the side deck to help you combat specific types of decks. So some side deck options in this deck. My side deck is 3 Phantasme, 3 Pankratops, 3 Super Poly, 3 Danko Sekka, and 3 Sphere Mode. Phantasme is generically good in this deck. It doesn't conflict with anything. In fact, it only helps you for targeting protection, and it can help you ritual summon. So Phantasme is really strong. It also helps you see your other side deck cards more often. Pankratops is generically good going second, so definitely play it. Super Poly is amazing for clearing boards against decks like Pendulum and Danger Thunder Dragon, so make sure to play that as well. It works well with Phantasme also. And honestly, any power side deck card that requires your normal summon can be used in this deck because you're not really normal summon. You can easily side out the Ben 10s and Vanity Rulers in order to put in normal summons like Danko Sekka and Sphere Mode. And there are probably other cards you can consider, but right now I think these are like the 5 best side deck options right now. There are obviously cards like Hand Traps you can play and Spell and Trap removal, but this is what I have for right now. Alright guys, we finished analyzing every card in this video. Now that we finally have covered all the cards to consider running in this deck, let's hop into the deck lists. So for the deck list, let's start with the pure variant. So I've already explained all of the cards in the video that you'll see in this deck list. So with that in mind, just make sure to go back into the video if you want to see what any of the cards do specifically. So we have 3 Nekroz Embryonic, 2 Colossalus, 3 Valkyrus, 2 Trishula, 1 Unicorn, 1 Gungnir, 2 Chalice Slime, 3 Manju, 2 Shurit, 2 of each incantation effect monster, 3 Extravagance, 3 Prep, and then 2 of each Nekroz spell. The side deck and extra deck are already pretty self-explanatory. The level 6, 11, and 12 aren't necessarily that important on which one you play specifically because none of them are really going to come up, they're just there specifically for Kaleidoscope. And then like I explained in the side deck portion of this video, that's why I'm playing those specific side deck cards in the side deck. You're playing 6 side deck cards for combo, 6 side deck cards for control, and then you're playing 3 cards to see all of them in specific matchups. And this ratio also makes sure you're not going to actually dead draw too many side deck cards because Phantasme can just draw you into your combo pieces regardless. One thing to note is in this build, I'm not playing Zaborg, and that's because I feel like it is really fragile to hand traps, and because decks can play hand traps so easily like Striker and Orcus, I just felt like right now in such a hand trap heavy format, you're not going to be able to resolve Zaborg that much, so I just didn't want to play it because it's just way too fragile, and I'd rather just be normal summoning Manju, which doesn't make me go neg as much because I don't have to tribute the incantations. So that's it for the pure build, and now let's discuss the Vanity build. So this is essentially the Jin 2.0 build. You're basically playing Vanity Ruler, which is the new Jin for the deck. You're playing 3 Embryonic, 2 Colossalus, 2 Trish, 2 Valk, 1 Unicorn, and that's it for the Nekroz monsters. As you can see that it is different from the pure build, not by much, but because you're focusing on Vanity Ruler more so than Unicorn, you don't need to play cards like Gungnir and the additional Valkyrus. You play 3 Chalice Slime because it's so important, you play 2 Ben 10 because it's really good, because it can also search Manju, which is obviously really strong. You also play 2 Shurit, you play 2 of each effect monster incantations, and you play the 1 Vanity Ruler. You play 3 Extravagance, 2 Prep, 2 Cycle, 1 Kaleidoscope, 1 Mirror, and then 1 of the incantation ritual spell. And then once again, the side deck and the extra deck are the exact same. So as you can see, this build is slightly different. It's not the most drastic thing in the world, but it is built differently. You can again throw Saravis into this deck, but this is just like a base template deck list for the deck. And that's it for the deck profiles. Nekroz is honestly a really fun deck. There are multiple routes to take it and different possibilities to try. The Vanity Ruler variant is almost a new Jin lock in 2019 and could prove to be effective at any regional level. Hopefully this video helped you out and you're able to use this video as a template to get started with playing this deck. If you guys want any of the cards mentioned in this video, make sure to go down into the description and check out my sponsor, TCG Player. By using the TCG Player BladeYGO affiliate link, you're buying the cards you need while supporting me at the same time. If you enjoyed this guide and want to see more guides on decks and archetypes like this one, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to stay up to date with my latest content. I thank you all so much for watching this video, and with that, I hope to see you soon.